the lake swimmer. A peaceful fishing trip turns into a nightmare when something human, but not alive, rises from the water. I remember this story vividly. It's something that never really left me. Every time I think about playing hide and seek in the dark, or even just walking past an alleyway at night, this memory comes back like a cold chill down my spine. I'll never forget what happened. It was early October, that time of year when the air feels crisp and the days start dying faster. My 3 siblings and I had gone to visit our mom at her small apartment. I have a sister, Jess, and 2 brothers, Mike and Eli. Our parents had divorced 2 years before that, and since then we didn't get to see our mom much. Our dad tried to do the right thing, so every now and then he'd let us visit her for a weekend. This was one of those times. My mom lived in a sketchy part of town. The kind of area where the streets were always busy, yet somehow felt abandoned. Even during the day it seemed off. Her apartment sat right next to a narrow alleyway that also served as one of the entrances to the building complex. The walls were cracked, the paint was fading, and the lamps flickered like they were tired of doing their job. You'd probably never find that place unless you knew exactly where to look, or unless you drove too far down that long, dark alleyway. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor. Despite the neighborhood, we were always excited to visit her. She was warm and gentle, her place small but cozy, smelling faintly of vanilla candles and old books. It reminded me of my grandma's house. Soft furniture, random decorations everywhere, a place that felt like it had a soul. One of the best parts of those visits was the neighbors. A while back we'd made friends with 2 kids downstairs, Zach and Chi-Chi. Zach and I were the same age, and we used to spend hours playing in the parking lot right next to that creepy alleyway. We played tag, kickball, and even cops and robbers. But that night, since it was October, just weeks away from Halloween, Zach had an idea. He wanted to play hide and seek. In the dark. Outside. It sounded like fun at first. My siblings were all in. We agreed that at exactly 9 o'clock, we'd sneak out of our rooms and meet outside to play. By the time 9 came around, the night had already swallowed the neighborhood. The only light came from the tall lamppost that painted everything in that rusty orange glow. We all gathered, me, Jess, my brothers Mike and Eli, plus Zach and Chi-Chi. Like always, we played bubblegum in a dish, to choose who would be the seeker. Zach lost. He laughed, covered his eyes, and started counting. Ready or not, here I come. Everyone ran in different directions. Jess and I stuck together, we always did. She was the oldest and somehow made me feel safe. We sprinted toward the back of the building, past the dumpsters, and deeper into the alleyway where it was darker and quieter. No one will find us here, she whispered. We both giggled, hiding behind the garbage bins. At first it was fun. But after a few minutes of silence, the excitement faded into unease. The night sounds grew louder, the distant hum of cars, a barking dog, the wind brushing against metal. I started to get impatient. Maybe we hid too well, I said. Jess smiled faintly, let's just wait a little longer. But after a few more minutes we decided to head back. As we stepped out from behind the bins and into the center of the alleyway, my stomach dropped. Standing at the far end of the alley, right under the flickering light, was a figure. Tall. Motionless. Watching us. The light cast a harsh glow from above, hiding their face in shadow, but what I could see made my blood run cold. The person had colorful hair, an afro of red, blue, and yellow. A clown wig. My heart started pounding. It wasn't Halloween yet. No one was supposed to be dressed like that. The figure didn't move. He just stood there staring. Jess grabbed my arm. We should go. We turned and walked as fast as we could, trying not to run, trying not to draw attention. When we found Mike and Chi-Chi near the front, we told them what we saw. At first they laughed until we pointed down the alley. The clown was closer now, half the distance from before, and this time it was waving. Slowly. The makeup was smeared black, covering its face completely, except for its eyes, 2 bright human eyes gleaming in the light. Then Chi-Chi screamed. There's another one, she yelled. We turned. At the opposite end of the parking lot stood another figure, also a clown but taller with green hair. We didn't wait. We ran. Mike and Chi-Chi bolted for their apartment, while Jess and I sprinted upstairs to ours. When we burst inside, Eli was already talking to Mom, shaking. He said he'd been hiding near the courtyard when he saw something too, someone walking slowly, dressed as a clown, whispering nonsense into the air. He thought it was Zach until he heard Zach's voice calling from behind him. When Eli turned around, the clown was right there, inches away, staring down at him. He screamed and ran. Mom hugged us all tight. She believed every word. That night we didn't sleep much. But sometime after midnight I woke up thirsty. I got out of bed, went to the kitchen and opened the fridge for water. That's when I heard it, a faint tapping sound. It was coming from the window. I remember thinking how impossible that was. We were on the second floor. I pulled the blinds and my entire body froze. The clown's face was pressed against the glass. The same one from the alley. I screamed so loud my mom came running. When she got there and looked, of course, it was gone. But she believed me. She always did. To this day I can still see that face whenever I close my eyes. I don't know how they got up there, and honestly I don't want to know. Since that night I've never played hide and seek again. Especially not in the dark. And I'll never, ever walk down an alleyway alone. The Whispering River. A man camping by the river begins hearing whispers coming from beneath the surface. Whispers that know his name. It happened in the summer of 2019. My cousin Jacob had just turned 18, and to celebrate, a group of us decided to spend the weekend at his family's cabin in the woods. It wasn't a fancy place, just an old wooden house deep in the countryside, surrounded by endless pine trees and a narrow dirt road that stretched for miles. No neighbors. No signal. Just silence. The cabin had been in Jacob's family for years, but nobody had used it since his grandfather passed away. It was one of those places that felt trapped in time, still full of dusty furniture, faded curtains, and that thick smell of wood and old memories. When we arrived, it was already late afternoon. The air was heavy with that golden light that always makes the forest look calm, almost peaceful. We unpacked, started a small fire outside, and spent the evening telling stories and laughing like nothing could ever go wrong. But that peace didn't last. Around midnight, after everyone had gone to bed, I woke up to a strange sound. It wasn't the creaking of the old floorboards or the wind, it was something else. A faint knocking. Slow and steady. At first, I thought it was one of the guys playing a prank. But the sound came from underneath the floor. I sat up, listening. 3 slow knocks, pause, then 2 more. I held my breath. It stopped for a moment. Then again. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and looked around the room. Everyone was asleep. Even Jacob. The sound continued, this time louder. I whispered his name. He stirred and sat up, annoyed. But when he heard it too, his expression changed immediately. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. We both got out of bed and followed the sound to the living room. The wooden floor beneath our feet felt hollow, like there was something below us. The knocking came again, right under our feet. Jacob crouched down, pressing his ear to the ground. "It's coming from the basement," he said. I froze. None of us had been in the basement yet. The door to it was in the kitchen, a heavy old wooden door with a rusty latch. Jacob grabbed a flashlight and together we went to check it out. The air grew colder as we approached. The knocking had stopped, but now there was something else, a faint dragging sound like something being pulled across the floor below us. When Jacob opened the door, a gust of cold, damp air hit us. The stairs were steep and covered in dust. "Stay here," he whispered. But I followed anyway. The beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing shelves full of old jars, tools, and furniture covered in white sheets. Everything smelled like rot and mold. And then, we saw it. In the far corner of the basement, the ground had been disturbed. The dirt was uneven, freshly turned over, like someone had been digging. Jacob froze. I could hear him breathing fast. We both stepped closer, our shoes crunching on the loose soil. There was something sticking out of the dirt, a small piece of wood painted white. It looked like part of a cross. Before we could say anything, a loud bang echoed from upstairs. Something heavy had fallen. We ran back up, hearts pounding, only to find the front door wide open. Everyone else was standing in the hallway, confused and half asleep. They swore no one had opened it. Jacob shut the door and locked it, then turned toward me. "We're leaving first thing in the morning," he said. We barely slept. The knocking didn't come back, but every now and then I'd hear faint whispers through the walls. Like voices buried under the floor trying to speak. When morning finally came, we packed and left without looking back. A few days later, Jacob called me. He sounded shaken. He said he'd gone back with his dad to check the basement, to see what that disturbed ground was. They dug a few inches down, and found a wooden box. Inside were 3 small crosses, a child's shoe, and a photograph so faded you could barely make out the faces. Jacob said he burned everything. I never went back to that cabin again. And sometimes when it's quiet at night, I swear I can still hear those 3 slow knocks, just beneath me. The frozen campground. A group of friends finds an abandoned campground in the forest, but they're not the first ones to return there. It was the summer of 2021, and I had just moved into a small apartment complex on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place surrounded by fields and a long stretch of road that led nowhere. At first, I loved how peaceful it was. No traffic, no neighbors arguing, no noise except for the crickets at night. But that peace started to fade the moment I first saw him. The man in white. It was around 2 in the morning when it happened. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to step out to the balcony for some air. From up there, I could see the long road leading out of town. That's when I noticed a figure walking slowly down the middle of it. He was dressed entirely in white. White pants, white shirt, even white shoes that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. He moved with this strange stiffness, like his joints didn't quite work right. At first, I thought maybe he was drunk or lost. But then I realized he wasn't stumbling. He was gliding. His head was tilted to the side, and even from far away I could tell something was off. He wasn't walking like a normal person. He was drifting. I watched as he got closer, step by step, until he stopped directly across the street from my building. And then he looked up. Even from the 3rd floor I felt it. That heavy, suffocating feeling of being watched. I couldn't see his face clearly, it was too dark, but there was a faint shimmer where his eyes should have been. Almost like reflection. I stepped back slowly, my heart racing, but I couldn't look away. He just stood there staring up at my balcony. Not moving. Not blinking. After a few minutes, I finally forced myself inside, locked the door and shut the curtains. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe some weirdo passing through. But the next night he was there again. Same time. Same spot. Same stillness. He didn't move or make a sound. Just stood there, head tilted, watching. It became a pattern. Every few nights, around 2 in the morning, I'd feel that same uneasy pull to look outside. And every time he was there, always across the street, always staring up. I stopped going to the balcony. I stopped sleeping near the window. But it didn't matter. Because one night he got closer. I woke up suddenly around 2:15 a.m., with the overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. The air in my room felt thick, like the oxygen had been sucked out. And then I heard it. 3 slow knocks on my door. I froze. The sound was soft but deliberate, like he wanted me to know he was there. I crept toward the peephole, my hands shaking, and looked. No one. The hallway was empty. I turned away, trying to calm down, and that's when I noticed something through the small gap in the curtain. A figure. Standing directly below my balcony. Looking up. The man in white. I stumbled back, my chest tight, feeling that same paralyzing terror as before. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. He didn't move. He didn't wave. Just stared, his head tilted slightly, that faint shimmer still where his eyes should be. And then, as suddenly as he appeared, he stepped backward into the darkness until I couldn't see him anymore. I barely slept that night. In the morning, I went to the landlord and asked if anyone else had seen him. She gave me a strange look and said quietly, "You shouldn't be living in that unit." When I asked why, she told me that a man had died there 5 years earlier. A man who used to wear white every day. He had lived alone. Quietly. No friends. No family. The neighbor said they used to see him pacing at night, walking up and down the same stretch of road, until one morning he didn't come back. They found him dead in his room, still dressed in white. I moved out 2 days later. But sometimes when I drive home late at night, I pass that road again. And every single time I can't help but look in the rearview mirror. Because once, I swear I saw him, standing by the roadside, head tilted, staring at my car as I drove away. The pumpkin farm. A couple visits a rural pumpkin patch for Halloween, only to discover the farm was never supposed to exist. It happened last October, just a few days before Halloween. My girlfriend and I had decided to take a weekend trip to the countryside, one of those quiet places with old barns, cornfields, and pumpkin patches everywhere. We'd been driving for hours trying to find this family-owned pumpkin farm we'd seen in an ad online. It promised a unique Halloween experience, with hayrides, homemade cider, and an old corn maze. But when we finally got there, something felt off. The place was almost empty. There were no cars in the lot, no people walking around, no music, nothing. Just the sound of the wind and the creaking sign that read, Henderson Pumpkin Farm, since 1953. Still, we figured maybe we were just early. We parked and walked up to the small wooden booth where tickets were supposed to be sold. Inside, there was a single woman sitting behind the counter. She was pale, her hair tied back tight, and she didn't smile once. "2 for the hayride?" I asked. She nodded slowly, her eyes not quite meeting mine, and handed us 2 paper tickets. "The ride starts soon," she said. "Just wait by the red tractor." We thanked her and walked toward the tractor, which was hooked to a large wagon full of hay. A few other people were already sitting there, maybe 6 or 7 total. None of them spoke. They just stared out into the fields, silent as if waiting for something. After a few minutes, A man climbed onto the tractor. His face was hidden by a wide-brimmed hat and a thick scarf that covered most of his mouth. Without saying a word, he started the engine and the wagon jerked forward. We rode through the fields, the wind growing colder with each turn. Rows and rows of pumpkins stretched as far as I could see. But something about them looked wrong. They weren't the bright orange kind you see in stores. These were darker, almost brown, and many of them looked deformed, twisted into strange shapes like faces frozen mid-scream. I glanced at my girlfriend. She looked uneasy too. After about 10 minutes, the tractor stopped in front of a massive barn. The driver turned around slowly and said in a hoarse voice, "Everyone off. The maze starts here." The others stood up immediately and began walking toward the barn without a word, their movements stiff, robotic. I leaned toward my girlfriend and whispered, "This is weird. Maybe we should just go." But before we could step off the wagon, one of the passengers turned and looked at us. His face was expressionless, his skin pale and tight, and his eyes, completely black. He didn't blink. He just stared until we froze. Then he turned back and followed the others into the barn. The driver didn't move. He just sat there, still facing forward. "Sir?" I called out. "Is this part of the event?" No answer. That's when we noticed something dripping from the edge of the wagon. Dark red drops falling slowly into the dirt below. My girlfriend grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now." We jumped off and ran back toward the car. The wind picked up, carrying with it this strange, sour smell, like rotting fruit and metal. When we looked back, the tractor was gone. The field was empty. No people. No barn. Not even tire marks. Just pumpkins. Thousands of them. Each one dark and misshapen, with faint outlines of faces that looked almost human. We didn't stop running until we reached the main road again. We got into the car and drove until the GPS finally reconnected. When I looked for Henderson Pumpkin Farm online, there was nothing. No listings. No reviews. No trace that it ever existed. A few days later, I went back out of curiosity. The place where the farm had been? Just an empty field. No structures. No sign. But in the middle of it all, sitting perfectly upright in the dirt, was a single pumpkin, dark brown, almost black. And carved into it were 2 words. "Come back." We never spoke of it again. But every Halloween I make sure we leave town. And I never, ever stop on country roads at night. If you've made it this far, make sure to subscribe for more true horror stories, and share this video so others know. Some places should never be visited.